Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric. Today I'm joined by Jason Warren. Jason, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got Jason. You can find him at the Jason Warren, also Mindfulness Medic, and we'll get into all the nitty gritty there. But yeah, as a fellow first responder, just like we're chatting before we started hitting the record, but another first responder that's very much about health, wellness, mental health, mindfulness. You hear it in the name. But I found your page and we connected a little bit and just kind of seeing what you're putting out as far as like, you know, the real talk, but also just what we need to do the job. The importance of health, the importance of operational ability, and then to see you post about and share that you got fired for saying something that was taken offensively when it was kind of just like a call out, right? Like, we've had a lot of people on the show talk about the importance of first responder fitness, and some people saying, you know, pretty overtly, like, hey, like, get in or get out. Like, you got a job to do. At the same time, I've heard people that have come on the show and a lot of sentiments in law enforcement, EMS, fire, just saying, hey, like, you can get there, right? Like, we can one step at a time start taking ownership. It's not to say like, hey, just because you slipped out of it, you can't get back. Not to say just like kick you to the curb, but like, let's get back there. Let's realize what you have to do. So I just wanted to give that little intro and then we'll get into all that. But first, Jason, if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into the EMS world, first responder life.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jason. I'm from New Hampshire up in New England, small little state most people have never heard of. I've been in fire and EMS for 12 years, been a medic for a little bit over 8. I reached a point in my career where I had hit rock bottom in my personal life. And over the last few years, I've been undergoing a really kind of personal growth, healing, and transformative journey for myself because I realized I wasn't showing up for my family anymore. And those were the most important people in my life. And I had been doing the typical first responder thing where I was so identified with my career and my titles and my accolades and what I was doing and so immersed in the job that I forgot about the people who mattered the most at home. And I was living in my victim story, the career of bad calls and all those things we experienced, the tragedy, loss, and suffering. Started having all the PTSD symptoms, and I became morbidly obese. Long story short, vices and addictions, hit rock bottom, nearly lost everything I had. So over the last few years, I've been on that journey to change course so I could start showing up for my family and showing up for myself, but also showing up for the people that depend on me in my career to be optimized at 100%. So one of the things I talk about a lot on my social media and through my story is my struggle with obesity throughout my life and kind of that physical transformation that I've made over the last couple of years. But I like to really riff on the fact that the physical has a direct correlation to the mental. I believe that the more physically fit you are and the better you take care of your temple, the more psychologically fit and resilient you're going to be. You're going to start to feel better mentally because that's the experience that I had.
Absolutely. Yeah, that interplay is undeniable for people that have actually undergone some challenge with that and some ownership and some experimentation with that, right? And you know, it could be like a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, physical, mental, but I think that a lot of people can agree that have been in a low point, and most of us that are adults living life, or you know, even childhood, adolescence, like things happen. But even if you feel like a pile of crap and you get outside, you start walking, you start breathing harder, like generally you feel better, right? There's a physiological response, all like brain chemicals, all the things that are shooting through your body. Like it, I think there's a valid argument for, hey, like if you have to figure out which one you want to work on first, it's really hard to just be like, oh, I'm just going to go I'm going to take 30 minutes and work on my mental health today. Like, what does that
Right,
look like? Um,
right,
so
right.
yeah, a little tangent there, or a little, maybe a little spiel, but I would say, hey, like if you're feeling low, like let's just start by doing something physical. Um, and then at the same time, like, hey, like getting outside, is that not mental decompress, right? Listen to your favorite music. Just chewing on some things that you're going through and what you want to attack while you are huffing and puffing with the dog. What's wrong with that, man?
Yeah, it's like you said. It's just the key is that personal accountability, and I think that that's what I struggled with the most in earlier on in my career, and in that initiation into this path was that being able to look at myself in the mirror and have that honest conversation with, okay, I have a lot of demons and darkness inside, and like why is it that way? You know what I
Mm,
mean? And it's really easy to get into that blame game and try to blame the career or the pay or the boss or the whatever. You know, we like to blame everything else externally besides looking internally into ourselves. So I think that the personal accountability and the discipline to take that daily action, and like you said, it doesn't have to be big and complicated. The thing I've found for myself is I like to overcomplicate everything, and
mhm.
something as simple as just going outside and getting 10,000 steps, or even if it's 5,000, like don't overcomplicate. Just walk, move your body, do some push-ups, you know, and that's kind of what I like to really try to preach is people get this paralysis by analysis. Like,
Yep.
oh, I can't afford this really expensive gym membership, or I can't have this or that. And oh, well, I might as well just sit around. Well, it's like, no, that's the victim story. That's
Mhm.
preventing you from making that progress.
Yeah. No, 100%, man. And like I've spoken about that before, but that's very much my tendency. That's like how I grew up. That's just like, it's my inner nature, my default. I've done a lot of active work in the career, especially to get past the overthinking because hey, you got to make a decision now. It doesn't have to be the best. It has to be okay. And then we'll work from there and we can debrief after action and hone in a better, best response later. But all to say, yeah, that paralysis is real. I think it's kind of a perfectionist nature thing. Recently, I did a little article that went on Police One about imposter syndrome, right? And so it's just that recognizing, like, hey, just do something, and then you have something to build on, right? And so if it is fitness, yes, the space is absolutely overwhelming, dizzying, but a very different experience from you. And I want to ask you about your experience in and out of obesity because I think it is so relevant, especially when we're talking about first responder fitness and you're like, hey man, like I've dealt with it, right? You've gained the weight, you've lost the weight. And so that's a very valuable insight. For me, it was just being like just a super unathletic, incapable like kid and young adult, and then coming in towards the career and being like, okay, like I got fit, right? Like I got fitter in college, but I would say like I got way more proficient and agile and strong as being a first responder, right? Like recognizing, hey, this is I need to take this really seriously and I got to learn everything I can. And it became a pursuit. It became a hobby, a passion, and something I really, truly enjoy still. But it wasn't easy, right? It wasn't something that I was, I had no natural talent in it. And people, my buddies will still make a lot of fun of me because my hand-eye coordination with ball sports is terrible because I didn't grow up doing it, right? So always an opportunity. But yeah, I kind of want to ask you about your reflections on specifically your experience with obesity because it does give you a different, more personal vantage point to speak from when people are like, oh, it's easy for you, right? Because if they look up your social, they'd be like, this guy's fit, what does he know? No, scroll down, he shares about that.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, man.
No, and that's what I really like to emphasize that point too, especially recently with like the focus on the couple reels that I had made where I used the word fat. You know, people really like to gravitate towards that word and think that I was being disparaging or that I was trying to make fun of people or like shame people, and that's not the case at all. It's like I've been sharing this message now since April of last year in 2003, and like I have the track record of I try to spread positivity and light and just try to inspire people to be better and be the best version of themselves because I truly believe deep down inside that that's what everybody deserves. And look, I get it. Like the jobs we have as first responders, it is very easy for us to get sucked into that trap of sitting at home on the couch, kind of apathetic, tired. We don't want to go out and be active with our families. We want to just make the excuses that we're too busy and too tired. Maybe tomorrow, just because of the scheduling, the sleep schedules are all out of whack. We have an extraordinarily stressful job, and yes, you know, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but we bear witness to more tragedy, loss, and suffering than the average human being does. And we see it on a regular basis throughout our careers, 25, 30 years sometimes. So it is super easy to get sucked into that trap of not moving and leaning into those vices and addictions to kind of try to hide from the pain that we're experiencing inside, because that's what I did. It was junk food, it was the TV, video games, alcohol, some other substances with the back injury, and that's the tragedy behind the ease of getting sucked into that. So for me, it was realizing that I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And it was just being too stubborn to quit and having those really dark thoughts sometimes, like, yeah, maybe my family would be better off without me, And it's like, you have to push through that and realize that on the other side of that pain and that discomfort that you're feeling is a life of limitless potential and positivity. And it just takes you to have the accountability to take a little bit of action every single day, one step at a time, and not focusing on that huge picture. I struggled with obesity throughout my pretty much like young childhood, teenage, and then a young adult life, bullied a lot for it. And yeah, it held me back a lot of ways mentally. It didn't help with the mental health aspect at all. And then again, once I started getting that stuff under control, I started to feel better about myself. I started to feel more confident. Again,
Mm-hmm.
later on, got my hormone levels all adjusted too. Like everything I was optimizing. I was like, wow, this is a life. I didn't know that living this type of life, this quality of life was possible, and I think there's obviously the mental health benefits, but there's also the physical benefits in our jobs. First responder work is incredibly physical, no matter if you're a cop, if you're in fire and EMS. Like when you show up on someone's worst day, I think it's incumbent upon us to be 100% ready and optimized with no excuse otherwise. You know what I mean? Like you're showing up and the public is expecting us to have that amount of pride in our profession where we have our stuff dialed in. Because if we don't, then we're doing a disservice to the people
Mm-hmm.
who are entrusting us. We want to sit around and complain about pay and not getting a fair seat at the table and all this other stuff. But it's like, okay, well, are you looking in the mirror and taking personal accountability first and having that pride in the profession? Because I think that's where it starts too, is just having pride in that title that you earned, because
Yep.
it took a lot to get there, right? And look at the people who came before you.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, and I'll touch on that real quick because I think when we lean into the cynicism and we just get overwhelmed by it. I mean, this is a reflection I've had, especially coming out of police recruiting a few years ago. Or coming out of the last few years we've had following 2020 and my most recent assignment before my current one. But yeah, you're trying to recruit cops at the rate at which they're leaving in the highest volume ever, right? But really what it comes down to and comes back to is like your why, right? Think about like what you wanted to do. Why did you come into this? Why did you want to be a firefighter? Why did you want to be a paramedic? And it's these very impressive, very applaudable ideals, right? This wanting to do more for other people in this critical moment. And can you do it, right? Like, how much training, how much studying, how much prep did you do to get into the thing? And now you're in it. And yes, it's not to say that the culture or leadership or policies or these things aren't weighing us down. It's not to say that a lot of first responders aren't underpaid throughout the nation. Absolutely they are, and we can talk about that, but what can we control, right? And that's what I hear you saying, right? It's that ownership of like, okay, if if I want to, if I want our fire department to be paid better, are we reflecting that? Are we showing the public? Are we showing politicians like that's, hey, we are worth it? Are we all bringing our best? And I did hear this, and I'll bleed into this section, but when you're saying like over dramatizing like the trauma and things like that, it's like, no, I don't think so at all, right? I think that there are those of us in first responder land that may over fixate on it, but it's a very
Mm,
real thing. Like we can't ignore it. So we don't want to be naive and just kind of put it down, sweep it under the rug. We know how that works, and AKA doesn't work. Like
mm,
mind the environment. Cool. Now, what are you going to do to uh, compensate for it? And I would say that goes right back to ownership. Like, what are the things you're doing for yourself personally, for your family? for your team so that you can better navigate it, make yourself more resilient. And that rolls right back into mental, emotional, physical health, sleep. These things are just going to make all the rises and dips, stress in your life just more manageable.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe through and through that we create the reality we experience with our thoughts and our actions. And our thoughts and our actions are those things that lie in the circle of influence we have within our lives, the things we can control 100% of the time, all the time, no matter what is going on around us, no matter how hopeless or lost we feel, or how the situation we're in our career, professional life, or personal life feels like it's falling apart around us. We have the ability to control that narrative within our mind with the things we do every day and the things we consume mentally, and the thoughts we allow to fester in our heads. So it's like, again, take that accountability, change the narrative, and you can change your life.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing about how you personally went, as you said, rock bottom with your family. What are some of the guardrails, some of the boundaries or practices that have helped you navigate that, right? Because that over identity, and then also, us and our families paying that price, like I'll say I still contend with that, right? Like as far as work blowing up on my phone, ignoring my family, going into the other room, like it's a day off. But here I'm doing this, and then my head's not in the game, and the game being like living life with your family, enjoying the time because of
Mm.
something that happened at work. And sometimes it's a big incident, sometimes it's literally like a personnel issue, and my emotions are just flared up, right? And like I'm not that's not the point. Like, and the point is my family, right? This is a very important job. It's more important. I'm going to come off cocky. Fine, that's fine. But it's more important than most jobs, right? Like,
Hmm.
we can't just have a functioning society without our jobs, and that's kind of the point. But yeah, we can't put our family second. So I'll just say, like, what are some things that you have found? Um, and maybe the initial phases might have been hard, but maybe you were able to turn it up. Or what are your reflections there?
Man, I used to fully buy into this whole search of work-life balance like a lot of us do. And I've come to the conclusion that work-life balance is a myth. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, man.
I like
I don't know if
to
you
just,
saw. I've been saying that, like, a
yeah,
work-life balance or the illusion thereof. I've been saying
yeah,
that
yeah.
more and more in the last few months.
You can look for it. You're not going to find it. And if you try to apply it to your life too much, you're going to burn out because you're going to feel like you're not applying yourself in the appropriate places. So I've just come to the conclusion that no matter what you do in life, wherever your boots are, wherever your feet are, just give 100%. And then, like, if that's at home, that's 100%. If work happens to creep into family time, that's okay. Mitigate it and deal with it. But I think where a lot of people get thrown off is they lack the conscious awareness of their thoughts and being able to just kind of, it takes an ability and an awareness of yourself to be able to ebb and flow through that situation and not get completely thrown off track by that, like your wife looking at you going, well, why are you looking at your phone? It's like, well, I got
Mhm,
a work thing I got to deal with real quick, but you guys have 110% of my attention when I get back,
mhm,
and just being able to mitigate those things as they come and not do the typical thing we like to do, at least I did, where I just burn my whole world down and I let it ruin a day,
mhm.
or I just create this massive amount of stress over it. So I think it's just wherever you are, give 100%, and don't identify with a career, but still have passion in what you do. It can still be the greatest job career in the world, but find your identity in something else besides your title and your accolades. That's really helped me out. You know,
Mhm.
drop the titles, be who you are, like in essence of what your purpose is on earth, whatever you believe in, and go with that.
Yeah, I love that, man. I had a recent post of that, and it's like basically my daughter starting kindergarten, and I think the funny thing that I always heard before having a kid and figured it probably made sense, right? But like the joke of basically we're so proud of our kids for them doing like basically nothing, right? Like from the time they're a baby and then they just like kind of look at something, you're like, oh my god, look at how strong that neck is. And but it's I make fun of it only because I think it's so cool, right? It's like your literal kid, and whether it's the first steps and these big milestones, or it's just like what a funny thing our kids said. And then it's one of those things you repeat back and someone's like, I guess, I guess I could kind of see that. Um, but all to say, like, reflecting on the career and the accolades, the promotions, like, yeah, it's awesome. I'm not gonna say like I haven't enjoyed those moments, but that's not the stuff. I think when I think about the end or the whole of my life and in reflection or totality, like it's not going to be any of that stuff. I'm going to feel good about my career, which I spent so many years of my life doing, but really it's going to come down to like, where am I at with my kid? Where am I at with my wife? Um, and everything in between. Like, how did we leave things in legacy for me, right? Like, what is that? And you think about work, and yes, work is a big deal for a lot of us listening in, like our professional careers, all that. But like, it's so much less about the policies or like the projects or the arrests or whatever, or the saves even, right? Like, talk about your career more so. Yes, I'm very proud of some saves I was involved in, but at the end of the day, it's more of like the people, right? Like, how did I interact with the people? Like, who did I coach? Who's going to reflect back? And I may never know about it, and that's fine. But like, I'd like to think that there's going to be some people, whether or not they remember me, but they got some lesson that I may have helped be involved in, right? Some recognition of what they're capable of. I'd like to think that's a thing when you come to work and you're generally positive, and contributing towards the team.
Yeah, when you have that disposition and you're able to leave an impact, a lasting impact on other human beings, I think that's where the magic is in this career.
Hmm.
I really think that that's where like the ends come together and it makes it all worth it beyond just the operational stuff and the cool guy stuff or whatever. The other thing too, I think in this career, I think it's a blessing and a curse. I think it gives us a really unique gift that most people don't get in their life, and that's the perspective of time.
Mm,
And you're talking about your kids and just being kind of fascinated and being in the moment of watching all of those moments as they grow up. And I think it's so easy for us to get caught up in day-to-day life and let those moments pass. But I think when you've been a first responder long enough and you recognize how quickly time goes by for some people and how quickly people lose everything that's important to them, how fragile life is, it really helps you, if you allow it to, focus on how important being in the moment is and how precious of a gift our life is. So waking up every day and just being grateful for the fact that we woke up again to
hmm.
experience another day to be able to watch our kids do all those silly things, right? With that innocence that we look at and we're like, the reason we find it so fascinating, I think, is subconsciously we want that again in our life,
Mm,
you know?
yeah. Yeah. No, that's deep. And there's a lot of layers there that I'll probably have to listen to that little section that you just said back. But one thing that stuck out to me that I want to talk about is essentially that gift, right? Like, earlier we talked about what can be overwhelming trauma and overwhelming focus on the trauma, right? But if you focus on negativity, that's where you're going to get back. But that gift, and I've spoken and written about this, but my close calls, I feel fortunate that I've had the support mechanisms and the habits and maybe the resilience at the time that they happen to come out of those positively, right? Losing a buddy at work, like, I absolute tragedy. I feel so fortunate to have had my experience with him, to have had his friendship and his example, and
Mm,
then also to reflect on what that does for me, like what that does for how I look at my job, my life, the fragility of life that you talk about. Yeah, we can go to these terrible circumstances, these bad accidents, and just be like what the hell, right? And get like nihilistic and be like, what's the point? Or you can say, yeah, every day is a gift, every moment.
mm,
I don't know whether I have 2 weeks left on this earth or 25 years or maybe more, right? With the way medical science is going, but I'm going to do what I can within reason with what I have and be grateful for it. And I think that that is such a possible gift, because of course, like, just depending on how you receive these things is how you're going to internalize or how you're going to manifest them into your own life.
mm,
Um, and I think that does help us towards that purpose and legacy. If we realize our days are numbered, um, and for those that might be really heavy, that's okay. Like, chew on it. But I mean, a lot of what you're saying is like resonating with Stoic philosophy for me.
mm. Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if you're into that.
Yep.
Yeah. So like
Oh, yeah.
memento mori, right? Like, kind of like, just to have death kind of on your doorstep or recognize that it could be there. A lot of people that aren't familiar with this would be like, that's super depressing. You're like, no, it's kind of like it's a YOLO, but not recklessly, right?
Yeah, a lot of people find that a lot of darkness and like macabre of that type of topic, but
Hmm.
it can really be used as a fuel to live with intentionality with your life. I think you just flip the concept on its head and stop looking at the darkness of the fact of our time is limited and the gift that it can give you every single day when you wake up.
Yeah. I'm curious this, like, so my lead in will be talking about career and identity. Um, because with the last topic we're talking about with like mortality or like kind of having finite time and appreciating that time and it being a gift and how we reflect that in our actions and who we are, what we put out, like I recognize so much personal growth and professional growth when, truly when I almost left, not police work totally, but I haven't really talked about this. I guess I've been mulling around how to talk about it. So another day, but I did almost leave my current agency. And so I almost went to a different agency for a job opportunity. Um, and in reflection, that one aspect was a little bit of free agency, and that was very empowering. But the other aspect was recognizing like my identity isn't and can't only be this department, right? Like I am my own person and I won't be able to affect everything here. Like I care so much about it. It's literally the only agency I've worked for in law enforcement. So like it's all I know, right? But it's also it. I had to realize that like there is a health in letting go or being willing to let go. But then what I reflected on was like, and ultimately what kept me there was the people there. And I was like, well, that's what I care about, right? It's not about the politics. It's not about the programs. I do try to get involved with programs and wellness and things, especially being command staff now. I that's a real passion of mine. But at the end of the day, when I leave, I hope that I left the people better, right? I hope that when people go on their careers, like something I said to that guy or gal as a sergeant will keep them a little bit more safe. I hope that something I said will keep them more open to talking to a therapist one day. I hope that something I said would help them recognize that they should go for that promotion, right? So that's like maybe a little diatribe about um, that healthy balance of identity. If you can find it, and I'm curious what that evokes in you. Especially reflecting um, on employment, on your identity. As a medic, and then to have that removed from you.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you have your identity, if you have everything you are tied into that identity, it can be a gut check when it feels like everything's ripped away from you. If like getting fired from the job and I'm a paramedic and my purpose in life, I believe, is to serve. However, whatever capacity that's in, I just find my purpose in life serving other people, alleviating pain and suffering. So yeah, when you lose that, there's that void, that darkness you can feel. You see a lot of guys experiencing that after retirement, where they just kind
Hmm.
of kick around. They don't know what to do with themselves, and they end up, usually, from what I've seen, get either back into the career part time, or they just can't stop. And when they stop, it seems like their life just kind of falls apart. And I believe that's because they didn't build those inroads in other avenues in their life to be prepared for that. And I think that's a really important mitigation strategy for everybody to think about is like, what do you enjoy doing outside of work? Besides like sitting on the couch and watching football, like what fills you with passion? What lights your fire inside? And go do that thing and start building that now. And don't be so tied down to a department or an institution because of fears and self-limiting beliefs. Like we all have those same fears and self-limiting beliefs. We think people are going to judge us. We think people are going to make fun of us. We think we're going to fail, that we're not good enough, that we're not deserving of good things, all of that stuff. But I can't emphasize the importance of just doing it anyways and leaning into that fear and discomfort. Because the more you lean into that fear and discomfort, you start building these things in your life where it becomes unrecognizable. You become a different person once you start doing that, because you need to become someone different in order to start achieving those new levels.
Hmm.
And it goes back into like, you're going to die someday. Why would you play so small with the life you have? If you want to go build a business on the side, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a gardener, I don't care, like go do that thing.
Hmm.
You can still be a law enforcement officer or a medic or a firefighter and still build those other things on the side. And then once you do that, if they expand to the point where they become financially beneficial enough for you to be able to do those full time, then great. Or you have a backup plan if things go sideways, you get injured, you can't do the job anymore, or you just feel like you want to hang up the hat. But if we jam ourselves so much into a corner as first responders, I've noticed, where we don't give ourselves many other options. And I think that
Hmm.
that leads to a lot of people's downfalls.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, what the first part that I want to highlight is how you talked about, the judgment, right? So that goes back into, it could be related to imposter syndrome, feeling like you're not adequate or you're not well prepared enough. But then also to do something different is to stick out, right? It's to be that nail that is asking to be hammered by trolls, by bullies, right? Like not by
Hmm.
people that like reasonably minded people that you respect the crap out of. Like think about this. Like I recently saw a post and I tend to agree with it like 99 times out of 100, but our fears of being judged, when you isolate them down, they're generally the people that you would never take their opinion anyway, right? Like you would never
Right.
seek their opinion, right? Like you never go to them for validation or like to run something by them. And yet, we put so much importance on their voice, right? I can think about it in my own department, right? Like I know for a fact who's not on board with the kind of things I try to do or say because I'm just of this thing. Hey, I'll own. I'm about positivity, wellness, and so some people like hate that. It's like it's nails on a chalkboard. At the same
Hmm.
time, I'm on accountability and performance, and so for some people, like it's just just quiet down, right? Like just go in your corner. But it is what it is. I have to recognize that. But ultimately, my audience is not really them. It's all the people that are coming up, and the future chiefs, the men and women that are going to be doing the job that surpasses me and certainly surpasses my time in the agency, in the career, and possibly on this earth. So it's for them. And I think when I really distill that down and I have to actively remind myself of that, I'm like, okay, cool. That's like it's fine. Um, I also love a lot of the topics you talked about. I've been talking about it more, and it tends to come up with retirees, but also like with this notion of like a side hustle or passion projects, like yes, if you always been fascinated by this thing, let's say like making beer, like cool, like get a part-time job, just like sweeping up the local brewery. They'll teach you'll learn a lot. Like you'll start working with them, pouring beer, whatever, and then you may find out really quickly, like, yeah, it's cool. I would never want to do this as a career, right? Like you
Hmm.
you don't know unless you try, right? And I truly believe that if people actually tried to dabble in these things, not for the purpose of exiting first responder work, but just seeing and feeling it out, a lot of times it would make you a better cop. It'll just make you a better person, right? Because you're actively learning, you're getting outside your comfort zone, which who doesn't like that? That's about self improvement. Anyone listening to this is like, yeah, I'm down for that. At the same time, again, you have that cynicism and that, you're just kind of in this well of like, well, I can't do anything else. Who hires a cop? Like, I don't have, a lot of folks in first responder work don't have a formal education. You may have been to a fire academy, right? You may have been to trade school, or you may have been straight out of the military. And there's a lot of people that feel like they don't have opportunities because of that. But until you step out, you may realize a couple things. One is that you may not really like the thing you do, or you might be like, actually, this is really badass, and I do have all these inroads and skills, and that's positive, right? That's manifesting positively for you, your family, everyone around you, and or you have this, what, like I actually do like it here, because the grass isn't always greener, and I just think
Hmm.
that it's just gonna make you better in whatever it is you are doing slash meant to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you become that well-rounded individual who just strives to do other things because it fills your cup and it makes you happy. It gets you jazzed, and you don't become that jaded, cynical individual who's just the cop or the medic and
Hmm.
that's all they do. And you go explore and I hate like live your best life, it's true though. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you have such limited time. Go do the freaking things you dream about. Stop playing small with your life. And you become a different person when you do that because you're leaning into an aspect of life that most people don't because they're too afraid to. Most people are too afraid to go out and do those things because they're scary. They have to have a lot of hard conversations about themselves and it challenges your ego when you try to go build something or you try to build a business and you fail and you're lonely and you feel like quitting every day, but it forms a part of your character that you can carry on into your professional career that will again will establish you as someone different than your coworkers, that will inspire others to be like, hey, I want to be like that guy. And yeah, you're gonna have haters. I like to always say, why take advice from someone who's living a life
Yeah,
you don't
that's
want to
case in
live,
point,
right?
right?
you know and no one who ever's talking smack is ahead of you. They're not building as much as you are. They're not
Yeah,
doing the things you're doing, right? It's
dude,
really easy to focus on that negative stuff, but you just got to keep pushing through it and
that's
keep
so
building
true.
and keep shining your light.
Yeah, very few people are punching down, right? It's because if you think about like all the people you really respect and the places you want to go, or even like just think about really influential CEOs, public figures, celebrities that you just like, you just like that guy or gal, right? And you're like, they don't even have the time or the concern. Like, they don't even know their trolls exist, except for it keeps like blowing up on their
Right.
assistant's like phone or something. They're like, dude, I don't have the time or care. Like, you can't afford to. Like, you just don't care. And so, like, definitely a thing to drive towards. It's probably the perfect time to kind of talk about your social media because you started Mindfulness Medic. I want to talk about what you do, and because front of mind is me starting social media to try to bridge with the community and just try to speak to our community positively. All the it's almost like it reminds me of our earlier chunk where we're talking about parenting or seeing in kids, like the things that you're nostalgic about. But
Mm,
I think mentorship is so much always, for me, is like trying to put out what I could have appreciated or what I needed back when
mm,
I was new, right? And the lessons that have resonated with me are the ones I needed the most. So that's what I talk about. That's what I share about, right? Wellness being a forefront, because I didn't know crap about health and nutrition and all that and the noise until I started doing this job and did it in all the wrong ways. Just like so many people that kind of had to take on that journey on their own. So, all to say, yes, when you do something different, social media is one. You do get a lot of the hate, you get a lot of attention, and people think that they may think that it's for all these other things that it's not about. But yeah, tell me what led you to come onto social media speaking about first responder stuff, about wellness, mindfulness medic.
It originally started back in April of last year, 23, because I recognized a massive void in what I thought was first responder mental health advocacy. And it's transformed into something else now. But that was its kind of like origin story, is
Hmm.
that I wanted to inspire other first responders to just live better lives and to advocate for first responder mental health, but not in like, I think in this kind of a bone I have, a little nitpick thing is that all of the first responder advocacy stuff on social media, we like to focus so heavily on the memes and the statistics on suicide and all this really negative dark stuff and how we're more apt to die from suicide than we are on the duty accidents or whatever. But it's like we need to focus on the positivity. And that's exactly what I try to do and what I talk about is I talk about the things that I wish someone told me about when I was new, when I
Hmm.
was coming when I was coming up through the ranks so I could build mind body spirit resilience for myself, not only to optimize myself for the current moment but to prevent the future psychological or physical injury from occurring. And that's what I do now is everything I talk about is like you said, it's stuff that I wish someone told me or things that I need to hear currently in my life right now. You know, I'm giving myself the message or I'm giving myself the pep talk
Yeah.
half the time.
Yeah, man.
And it's just sharing those methods and tools that I've used because again, that was I got so tired of seeing the same old like peer support group bulletins on the wall of the bathroom stall. And it's like, that's all we have for guys on the department is this little thing they read while they're going
Hmm.
to the bathroom. And then in my state for the fire and EMS stuff, we have yearly con ed we have to do to maintain our certifications. And the only thing mental health related is like the same 30 or 40-minute PowerPoint presentation. It's been the same for the last decade. It's never changed. So I'm like, okay, well, these are the things that I've used for my life, the 6 pillars that I've used. And so I created the brand Mindfulness Medic, and that's what I started promoting on my social media. And that's my way of trying to inspire other first responders, people in healthcare, high stress professions to just build mind, body, spirit resilience in their life. Because that's how I believe you get to fulfillment.
Yeah. I love that, man. Especially the part where, as you post or you reflect, you may be speaking to yourself. And I feel the same way, right? Like when I started on social media, a lot of it in 2020, and it was health and wellness, but it was also just trying to share some of my thoughts and some of what most cops were feeling in that time.
Mm,
Um, and that's where I got a lot of support. And people were like, man, like, you need to say more, right? And it wasn't trying to politicize anything. I was just like, hey, most of us are trying to do this job and we're not happy about what we saw over there, but we're human and we're not claiming to be perfect. We don't even like the title of hero. Most of us don't, but we're trying our best because we're part of this community. We're doing this important thing. A lot of times it's ugly. It is what it is. But we have a duty to try to do the best slash better than what we did before and what others did before. And just trying to speak from that, just like plain, I guess, vantage point. Like I got a lot of support saying like, hey, like I wish more cops were like you. And I'm like, that's kind of the point, man. They are,
mm,
these people I grew up with or kind of distant through the years. Maybe it's high school and then never any contact since. But like that is the point. Like we're not all like a stereotype. Um, there are some truths to stereotypes, but however, like we're just like people. We're just normal people, and so trying to humanize the badge, and I totally get that. The humor or the memes or whatever we try to do, I'm not immune from just trying different things because I have different emotions and I have different
For sure.
things that pop in and come out. But I did hear this thing recently that was it was actually someone just kind of saying like, I just don't know like who you are because how you interact in your day to day at work is not the same as like what you're on social. So which is real? And I didn't really give him anything in the moment because I was like, that's an interesting thought, and I hadn't really I hadn't put it in those words. But for myself, it makes sense, and I'm like, well, that's the thing is that when I'm having an interaction with one person at work, I'm having a different interaction with a different person, and it's not because I'm fake. It's because we have a different relationship. And if I'm speaking to a room, I have a different voice because I have to try to be mindful of the whole room. And then when I come online, sometimes I'm speaking to literally the world, right? Because I'm like,
Mhm.
anyone could be watching this, but sometimes it's really, I'm speaking to young people coming into first responder work, or literally I'm speaking to the applicant, right? And so it's only reasonable that my demeanor and my chats would change, right? I'm having a different conversation with you, Jason, because we have shared experience than if someone just asked to come on the show and interview and be like, sure, okay, I guess, right? That would be very
For
different.
sure.
The energy would be different, the chemistry. If I was yucking it up with one of my buddies and we weren't recording, can can any reasonable person, but like any reasonable person would recognize that's going to be an entirely different conversation because of the format, because of the context. So I'm like, that's life, man. The only difference is that someone like Jason or someone like Eric could have these evidentiary points where someone's going to point out and cite it as fake, but really that's life. I talk differently to my mom than I do to my kid. That's facts. It should be that way.
That's one of the coolest parts of the self growth journey, I think, that we get into is the masks. When you start realizing, like,
Mm.
whoa, I'm wearing different masks for different people.
Hmm.
And then you can go pretty deep into that rabbit hole about how many masks am I wearing, which one's real. And because I've gotten that too before. I've gotten people like, well, I wish you were more like you are in social media. You're a little bit more stoic and reserved in real life. And it's like, dang, like it does make you do that self reflection. And I think it's cool when you've gotten to that point in your own awareness of yourself, when you're able to recognize that. And yeah, like you're going to have different tonalities with different groups of people. You're not going to speak to teenagers the same as you'd speak to, guys in the crew room or whatever. It's going to be different. But I think the important part is once you start gaining that awareness, you start figuring out who it is you truly are. And then that goes right back into what we were talking about finding your purpose and who you are truly deep down inside, behind the badge, behind the uniform, and being that first.
Yeah. But even that part you said, Jason, about like, okay, you're maybe more stoic or reserved at work or, in your day to day life. Yeah, it depends on who you're around. But to that point, for me, what that evokes is I'm not going to like, I don't want to throw out a bunch of just stuff that you may or may not want to pick up. The point of social media is like, you can choose to watch it or not. If you don't agree with it, like, I don't know why you're still following, right? Unfollow, like,
Right.
move on with your life. You don't have to tune into the podcast. Certainly, like, time is valuable, even commute time. Like, I listen to something you like. Don't listen to my voice if it doesn't resonate with you. And that's the point, right? Like, I speak for myself and I speak for people that it's helpful for. And because I get the feedback, because I hear people saying, like, hey, that post, like, that's exactly what I need to hear this week. Like, I literally went through that. Like, that's the stuff that keeps you going. It's about that positivity. And I appreciate that, like mindfulness medic. That's what we need more of. And sometimes it's not like it's not the clickbaity thing because it's just real stuff that we need. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, it's all about just making those ripples because the ripples make waves. And like you said, my whole thing with this is if I can inspire one person, one guy out there, one gal out there to improve their lives, then I call that a win, right? And then on top of that is you inspire one person, that person goes out and inspires 5 more and they inspire 10 more. It's like this big residual effect in what we do and just being positive and shining your light because there's enough darkness surrounding our careers, whether that's just from the content of the career or the people who want to cancel us or the people who want to defund us and just all that stuff we're constantly dealing with on a day-to-day basis. again, just try to be positive, try to shine your light, inspire others to be better.
Yeah. I love that, Jason. So let's wrap with mindfulness medic and like what are some of the things you work with people on and is it coaching or let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I have apparel, which is it's all based on my 6 pillars and like I like to say it's the physical kind of representations of everything I've gone through in my life. It's represented in the apparel and the messaging and the designs. And then I do some coaching. I do one-on-one coaching, group coaching to help first responders, people in healthcare, high stress professions just get that focus and clarity they desire. Those people who have that voice like I did in their heads for so long that they want to do more with their life, but they don't really know where to start. It's one of the most common things I get in DMs is from people is like, I don't know where to start with any of this. It's that analysis, paralysis by analysis type
Hmm.
of thing. And just helping them on that path and helping them build systems in their life to start improving those areas, those components in life that they want to do, whether that's personal, professional, relational, physical, building a business, all that stuff. And then I built a free online community. It's a Resilience Collective. That's for first responders again. Healthcare workers, people in high stress professions, just a place to gather for fellowship, for networking, for some peer-to-peer support. It's not like a therapy group. It's not for people to come in and be like victims and be depressing. It's for people who want to come in and really start building things and inspire other people to
Yeah.
build stuff in their lives.
I love that, man. I love that. Well, I appreciate so much your energy, your message, and it's what we need more of. So where just for folks, remind them where they can find you on the different platforms or website.
Yeah, so I'm primarily on Instagram. It's the Jason Warren. And then Mindfulness Medic is my second page. And then I have mindfulnessmedic.net. Somebody bought the .com. Such a pain
Yeah,
in the ass.
it's gonna be cheaper, I think, right? Like, there's like the different pricing things. Like, I just got an email about like if you do .us or .this, I'm like, just leave me alone with the noise. Like, I
Yeah,
picked what I picked. It is what it
right.
is. So, yeah, thanks so much, man.
I appreciate it, Eric. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.